This is Christian Gomez for the New Americans Unrestricted, and today here on the program, we're joined with Congressman Tom Tiffany of Wisconsin. Congressman Tiffany, thank you for joining us here for the first time at the New American.
That's my pleasure.
Absolutely. First of all, I would like to congratulate you. Twice a year, the New American magazine produces and publishes the Freedom Index, which rates every member of Congress on their fidelity to the U.S. Constitution and Americanist principles of liberty based upon how they voted on what we consider to be the top 10 most important votes that have occurred since the publication of the last Freedom Index. And you have garnered, since the time you've been in office, sworn in back in 2019, a lifetime score of 96%. And 6 of those 10 votes that go into each Freedom Index in the magazine, they get 6 of the 10 we use for something we call Congressional Scorecard, which is an individual scorecard on members of Congress. And the last one, you have a perfect 100% score, and you've gotten a 100% score various times before as well. So we want to, of course, first congratulate you on your stellar constitutionalist voting record.
Thank you very much. That's why we're supposed to be in Washington, D.C., adhere to the Constitution.
That's right. And hopefully more of your colleagues will join you in taking that oath very seriously, as you do. So thank you. So one of the most important issues for us here at the New American Magazine and our parent organization, the John Birch Society, is a vigorous defense of national sovereignty and independence from globalist bodies. And back on April 10th, I believe it was, you introduced a joint resolution withdrawing approval of the agreement establishing the World Trade Organization, H.J.Res 93. Can you tell us some of the problems that you see with the World Trade Organization and why, in your estimation, we should get out of the WTO?
Yeah, so what the bill accomplishes is requiring a vote of whether the United States should be a member of the World Trade Organization. So we get that opportunity every 5 years in Congress, and it's been 20 years since there's been a vote. I think it's about time all congressional members should have to take a vote on this, whether we want to be involved with another one of these multinational trade organizations or governing entities that are out there, whether it's World Health Organization, World Trade Organization, whatever it may be. But anyhow, it would require a vote. And the reason that I think we should have a vote is that we have turned our sovereignty over to countries like China, to the World Trade Organization, to the detriment of America. And we've seen this outsourcing that has gone on from America. We traded just fine before there was a World Trade Organization. Before, I really see the starting point of this as the Rio Accords in the first George Bush's administration, in the early 1990s, where the push really began. Remember, it was the end of the Cold War. We had vanquished, President Reagan had vanquished the Soviet Union. And people thought, okay, we're going to have these global entities that are going to be good for the entire world, that are going to bring peace and prosperity to all of us, and that we should all trade together. And we'll have this multinational organization, in this case, the World Trade Organization, that makes decisions on whether the right thing is being done or not. We traded just fine before 1995 with countries from around the world. The World Trade Organization has not helped the United States of America. In fact, it has hindered us by taking the side of China. It is time for a vote on whether America should continue to be in the World Trade Organization.
Well said. Virtually all of the modern virtually all of the modern free trade agreements that the United States is a part of, and that other countries are a part of with other countries, almost all of them are done today under the auspices of the World Trade Organization. In fact, the term WTO appears 87 times in the text of the United States-Mexico Canada Agreement, the USMCA. Why is it that you believe that even when we have a Republican administration, a conservative-leaning administration, that the trade agreements that are written still contain WTO language and recognizing our obligations, as they put it, to the WTO? And what do you think global trade, or U.S. trade specifically, would look like if we just got out of the WTO altogether?
Yeah, so President Trump and his administration are doing great work at this point, but it's important for Congress to do its job also. And it's important for us to codify some of these various pieces of legislation, or the executive orders in particular, that have been put in place by President Trump, because they only last for 4 years until the next administration. We need to codify some of that, put it in statute. And that's why I think we should be dealing with some of this. And some of it is just Congress can act. The World Trade Organization is one of those. It is only us that can change that by a majority vote in both the House and the Senate. And by the way, it's just a majority vote in the Senate. It does not require a cloture vote in order to change this with the World Trade Organization. Our farmers and manufacturers have given up so much as a result of this globalist movement that has subjugated our sovereignty to these multinational organizations. It's time to get back to having American sovereignty. President Trump is doing a really good job, but Congress needs to do its job also.
Absolutely. Of course, the WTO itself is the product of GATT that preceded it. And one of the original goals of GATT back in the late 1940s, when it was created after World War II, was to create something called the International Trade Organization, which at the time failed. And they eventually succeeded with the creation of the WTO. But the mindset behind whether in ITO in the 40s, GATT, WTO in more recent times, is the idea that there are those who believe the world would be better off, supposedly, if all trade barriers between nation states were eliminated. Do you think that that is a wrong approach when it comes to trade, or do you think that that there is or do you believe that there shouldn't be any kinds of trade barriers?
Well, I think we should have as few trade barriers as possible, but you're describing an ideal world. Free trade has been very expensive for America, isn't it? I mean, where pharmaceuticals are no longer produced in this country, or at least many of them are not, where we're getting some of our components for the defense industry, we're dependent on other countries. There are critical things. We are not going to go back to 30 years ago. I am not so Pollyannish as to believe that, but we do need to make things in America. And I think it should focus on some of the critical things that if there is a conflict with another country, we better at least be in part self-sufficient. And I think about pharmaceuticals. Let's tie that to COVID and what happened there. Also, the defense industry. I believe in peace through strength. You better be able to create munitions and protect yourself, because it will always be a dangerous world. Now, we should do everything we can to make it less dangerous, but there are always countries that are seeking one up on other countries. And China is that country in the 21st century. And if I could say that when we got to the end of the 20th century, it was clear America was astride the world. We had largely won this whole battle of World War I, World War II, the Cold War. We had won with the American ideals carrying us in the world. And we thought that would just continue into the future. Well, we find out that China, as we allowed them to ascend and we gave away so much of our sovereignty, shall we say, we gave away so much of our industrial capacity to China, we find out that they are not seeking democracy, because that was the whole message in the mid-90s as we got to 2000, is that if we just allow China to be able to be prosperous and to be able to grow and be more successful, that they'll become more democratic. That has not happened. President Xi has made it very clear. They seek global hegemony here in the 21st century. And so now, as we sit here in the early 21st century, we have this grand battle that is going on, no different than the 20th century, few different players. But is this going to be an American century? 20th century clearly was. Is the 21st century going to be an American century? And that is being decided right now. And that's why this proposal to get us out of the World Trade Organization is so important, because free trade has not worked for the benefit of the United States of America.
Absolutely. And speaking of an ideal world and the ideas of having more global controls. One of the other idealistic things that came after World War II, of course, was the creation of the United Nations. And last year, you introduced an amendment to a bill which called for the total defunding of the United Nations. I don't know if you're planning to do that again with a future bill or vote this year or even next year in the current Congress, but is that something that you're working on? I know that there's a bill introduced by Congressman Chip Roy to withdraw the United States from the United Nations. I'm not sure if you're a sponsor of that, but do you also support getting out of the United Nations entirely, going further than even defunding the UN?
Yeah, possibly. What I was really focused on over the previous couple years during the Biden administration is when I made a trip to the Darien Gap to view the illegal immigration, that the pipeline that was being built down there to send people to the United States of America, where hundreds of thousands of people went through that narrow throat of land known as the Darien Gap in southern Panama. I saw firsthand what the United Nations was doing. There was a group there, the International Organization for Migration, IOM. That's a United Nations outfit. They had set up encampments and they had basically industrialized the process of sending people from all over the world, not just Central and South America, but from all over the world. They had industrialized that pipeline of sending people to the United States of America. At a minimum, we should be defunding the International Organization for Migration because they seek to breach our borders and breach our sovereignty. They do not serve the interests of the United States of America. So at a minimum, I would like to see them defund.
Absolutely. And of course, President Trump has made a lot of efforts to withdraw some various different aspects of the UN through executive orders. And he's had other really good executive orders, like the one to defund to dismantle the Department of Education. But yesterday, we saw that a federal court in Boston, Biden-appointed judge, no surprise, ruled that the president can't do that. So obviously, we're going to encounter left-wing judges that are going to say the president can't do this through executive order, can't do that through executive order. But you've mentioned before, and even on X, you've called for codifying a lot of President Trump's EOs. So is there any appetite in Congress to do so? I know you want to do so specifically. I know Congressman Massey would like to do so specifically, but can we get Speaker Johnson to rally the rest of the Republican Party to actually, as you've been saying, codify these EOs into actual law?
We actually did one bill about a month ago that went through the House, the No Rogue Rulings Act, authored by Congressman Issa from California, that puts some kind of fences these decisions that are being made by these rogue judges. In particular, what it does is it limits a ruling to only those that filed the lawsuit. So it prevents these nationwide injunctions. And that bill is over in the Senate right now. So that is a good bill and a good first step. Now, do we ultimately get where we have to impeach a judge, which would be the sledgehammer of legislation? I would hope the No Rogue Rulings Act would do something, that the Senate would pass that and we'd be able to do something about it. But I think ultimately, Chief Justice Roberts is going to have to take action here. He talks regularly about how he wants the courts to be respected in America. And he's right about that. We need to make sure that we have an effective functioning judiciary. But at what point is he going to take the lead on the Supreme Court and say to his fellow justices, this has gone too far? We are going to lose our legitimacy if we have judges that put out these rogue rulings like this. I mean, think about it. The Education Department falls under the executive branch, which is President Trump currently. He has the ability to manage that. I mean, it's a separation of powers issue. At what point is the Supreme Court going to say, we're going to respect that separation of powers?
Absolutely. And the Constitution actually grants Congress the power to remove jurisdiction over certain matters from the courts. Is that something that you would support doing to mitigate some of the rogue decisions that we've been seeing in the last few months?
Yeah, under Chairman Jordan, what we're really trying to do is use a ratcheting effect here where we don't go immediately to impeachment or whatever. We would rather not do that. But it is clear we're going to have to take progressive steps here. And I would say one of them, after this No Rogue Rulings Act that we passed, I think one of the next steps is to use the appropriations process and perhaps defund some of these courts that are issuing the no rogue rulings, because we do have jurisdiction in that realm, that we do fund the courts. And if there's a judge that is not going to follow the law, that's not going to respect that separation of powers, then we may need to take action to prevent that from happening.
Absolutely. So on Thursday morning, of course, the House of Representatives voted and passed H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Critics say that it will substantially add to our nation's debt. Even on your side of the aisle, Congressman Massey said, quote, overall, even though I agree with a lot of the policy that's in there, if you take the totality of everything, the debt will be over $50 trillion in 10 years. Now, we were already headed for a lot of debt, but this exacerbates the problem. The big, beautiful bill will add an addition to $20 trillion that we were already going to incur by not addressing those issues and by increasing spending and cutting taxes. It's going to add another $3.5 trillion, at least, to the debt, he said. You voted for the bill. Do you share his concerns about the debt? And if so, what are some things that Republicans can and should do next, basically?
Yeah, I do share some of Congressman Massey's concerns, though I came to a different conclusion. I think there is plenty of good stuff in there that we should be voting for. I originally ran for the state legislature in 2010 when we had a $3 billion deficit under Jim Doyle. And I ran largely because of fiscal responsibility. And I told people back then, you will not fix it in one budget. It's going to take a decade to fix it. We did. And you look at where the budget is in the state of Wisconsin at this point, largest rainy day fund. There's been a budget surplus over the last number of budgets, including the last couple that I worked on the Joint Finance Committee. This is something that's really near and dear to me. And let's deal with the good stuff first. We are securing the border. We are putting measures in place that are going to build on the executive orders of President Trump to make sure that the border is secure for the long term. I thought that was the number one issue in the last election. I thought it was the most important thing before us, the American people, is to make sure that we have a country that has borders. So that's a really good part of this. We were able to shorten up the time frame for many of these green energy subsidies. I call it the green fantasy. And we were able to put in there that if you do not have I believe it's 5% of your project started for one of these intermittent sources of power like wind and solar, within 60 days after the bill is signed into law, then you will not receive the subsidies. And of course, they won't be built if they don't get the subsidies. By the way, those subsidies are up to $50,000 an acre for wind and solar. It's enormous how much it's costing us. So I thought that was a really good thing. We got some good changes in Medicaid. Those of us in the Freedom Caucus fought really hard. They put the work requirements at 2029 originally. We said that's unacceptable. Those have been moved up to 2026 yet in the Trump administration. And so there's a bunch of stuff that was really good. We defunded no tax breaks for Planned Parenthood. There's no taxpayer-funded gender surgeries for both underage people as well as adults. We removed the tax off from suppressors. And so there's a whole bunch of good stuff that we did there. I would say there's two things that concern me about the bill. One is what you just read off, is that the savings come in the back half of the 10 years. So it's the classic Washington, D.C. math where they say the spending happens up front, the deficit reduction is later. I'm hoping that the Senate will take action. Lindsey Graham said some good things yesterday about they're going to be better in regards to that. I know our Senator Johnson, there is nobody better on this issue, and he's been very critical of the bill. I hope he gets some fixes on there, that we get more of that deficit reduction in the upfront in the first 5 years of the bill. So that's certainly a weakness, and Representative Massey points it out very well. And one of the things that we can do in regards to that is that SALT deduction, state and local tax. The New Yorkers were able to get it raised from $10,000 to $40,000. So think about that. Somebody making $500,000 in those states, they can deduct up to $40,000 of their state and local taxes. It's no wonder New Yorkers and Californians don't care about their high taxes, because they get it deducted on their taxes, and we pay for it in the states that are fiscally responsible. I hope the Senate takes a meat cleaver to that, raising that from $10,000 to $40,000, because there is no reason to reward New York and California for their profligacy.
Do you think that if Senator Johnson and a few of the other fiscal conservatives in the Senate, like Rand Paul and Mike Lee, if they're able to get those fixes put in there that you just described, might that compromise the bill's passage back in the House for a when it goes back to the House, from the blue state Republicans, because they're the ones who want this?
I think leadership in the House expects the Senate to do this, and that's why they gave in. There is no reason to go to $40,000, just no reason at all. So I hope they scale that back. It should be scaled back to $10,000, but there is no reason for it to be $40,000. And the SALT caucus has a real problem. There are no senators that are Republicans in New York, New Jersey, Illinois, or California. There is no constituency for this amongst Republican senators. And like I said, I hope they take that thing right back to $10,000. And by the way, that price tag on that is over $300 billion. So think about that. That's over $300 billion. If you want to see some of that deficit reduction move up in the 10-year window, this is a good way to do it.
Now, you just mentioned a moment ago your time in the legislature in Wisconsin, and in comparison to New York and California, you mentioned the fiscally conservative the fiscally conservative states, and I imagine you consider Wisconsin to be, or at least have been, one of them. But lately, the state, of course, Scott Walker is no longer the governor. Tony Evers is. How do you rate Governor Tony Evers' handling of the state of Wisconsin, and what needs to happen in that particular state, this particular state, to restore some of the common sense fiscal restraint that we saw, like in the Walker administration?
We need a new governor. So at best, I would give Governor Evers a D. I mean, he went along with the legislature with some of the tax reductions, some of the school choice stuff. He went along with them. By the way, he would have never done it. I mean, let's be real clear. If Tony Evers had a Democrat legislature, like in Minnesota or Illinois, he would be doing the exact same things that Tim Walz and J.B. Pritzker are doing to their states. He would do the same exact thing. And so I'd at best give him a D, but he's headed for an F here with what's going on in the state of Wisconsin. I mean, he introduced a budget that would take us back to deficit. It has a structural deficit in it, if you take a close look at it. I mean, other parts of it, doubles the cost of the privilege to be able to fish and hunt, something that people take a lot of joy and have fun at doing. He wants to take the fun out of Wisconsin also. And so we know very clearly what Tony Evers would do. But I believe if he had a Democrat legislature, but the biggest concern to me is twofold in regards to Tony Evers. One is education. We have now fallen below Mississippi in literacy for our fourth graders. Think about it. Our kids can't read, and they're doing worse than the kids in Mississippi currently with education. He is the education governor. He's had control of education going on 16 years now in the state of Wisconsin. That is an utter failure. And the second thing is in regards to energy. He continues to move us towards these intermittent sources of power like wind and solar. His Public Service Commission wants to close some of our coal plants where we won't have this base load power. We are converting thousands of acres of productive farmland here in Wisconsin to these intermittent sources of power. It is a mistake that we are going to live to regret, especially a state that is so heavy in manufacturing like Wisconsin.
Absolutely. So do you have any plans to potentially run for the governorship of Wisconsin?
So I'm considering that. We got our plates full out in Washington, D.C. I was elected by the people of the 7th Congressional District to make sure and get good things done in this session, and we're going to stay focused on that. But as we get through 2025 here, I'm taking a close look at it, and we'll make a decision if I think that's the right thing to do. And by the way, there's 2 questions that I'll be asking. Am I the best person? First of all, where can I do the most good for the people of the state of Wisconsin? That's what I always ask, whether I was in the state assembly, state senate, or running for Congress. Where can I do the most good for the people of the state of Wisconsin? That's number 1. Number 2, am I the best Republican am I the Republican has the best chance to be able to win the governorship? Those will be the 2 major questions that will be in the forefront.
Speaking of Wisconsin and your focus on right now things in Congress, with the Supreme Court race that happened earlier this year in Wisconsin, obviously the left has solidified their control, at least for now, of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And it's believed widely that the congressional maps in that state will be challenged. And if they are challenged and the court rules that it's unconstitutional in their liberal estimation, and they're able to carve out new districts or modify the districts to benefit the Democrats, are you concerned that that 2026, the midterms, may be a bad year for the Republican Party and a good year for the Democrats? And if you do share that concern, what can the party do now, you believe, to make sure that the left and the collectivists and the socialists basically don't take over in 2026?
So it is of great concern. I think we can do well. So first of all, in regards to the redistricting, by any fair reading, the state Supreme Court cannot overturn those maps. I mean, any unbiased legal scholar will tell you you can't do that. We're going to fight like heck to stop that from happening, including if we have to go to federal court. And I don't know if that would be successful, but we need to fight for that, because there's a simple reason why there's only 2 Democrat seats out of 8 in Wisconsin. Liberals are packed in Madison and Milwaukee. I would urge your listeners, go read Joe Handrick's stuff. Joe's a friend of mine from up in the Minocqua area here, and he's the best number cruncher in Wisconsin, but he understands this better than almost anyone in Wisconsin. And just take a look at his analyses in regards to this. And it's very clear why this has happened. Liberals have packed themselves into Madison and Milwaukee. One thing I would say, though, Dane County's fastest growing state or county in Wisconsin. We as Republicans can no longer ignore Dane County and just say, we're going to win the rest of the state. We don't have to worry about Dane County. Look at President Trump. He did one of his campaign stops in Dane County in 2024. We have to go compete for those votes. And we have good issues with which to compete with, including the failure of the educational system, because Wisconsinites, regardless of political stripe, believe in a good education for their children.
Well, thank you so much, Congressman Tiffany. We hope to have you on again on the program, and we wish you the best of luck, whether you stay in the House or you decide to run for governor of Wisconsin. And we hope to have you on again to discuss either of those issues, what's happening in the House or Wisconsin in the future. So thank you so much for your time, Congressman.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And by the way, as we're speaking here, Christian, we're going into Memorial Day weekend. I'll be speaking in Merrill at the post down there on Monday morning. I urge everyone, go to a Memorial Day ceremony this Monday and pay respects for those who gave everything for our country. And the operative word in my speech will be something you cited at the very start, and that's liberty.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and happy Memorial Day to you and all those who are watching who have served our country. God bless. Thank you. Take care.